You're watching the chapter number 4 of the Blender Materials, Textures and Nodes course working with Emission. In this chapter, we'll be focusing on all these topics in complete detail, and then we'll also use them in the arcade scene that we have been creating since the chapter number 1. And yes, if you are new to this course, then do check out the previous 3 chapters by using the link given in the description of this video. So I've opened this file where we added this Suzanne object to understand about the principal volume node, but right now I will hide this object, and let's also unhide the plane and the UV sphere. Select the UV sphere and I'll remove this red glass material that we created in the previous chapters. Now to begin with, the first topic for this chapter is understanding about the emission node. So in the shader editor, click on the new button, select the principal BSTF node and press X to delete. Now press Shift plus A, then go to shader, and in this list, select the emission shader. We'll place it over here and connect the emission socket to the surface socket in the material output node. Now as the name suggests, this node is basically used to create an emission or a glowing material to be applied on the object. We also understood about the emission settings in the principal BSTF node, where you have this option which is called the emission, from where you can control the emission color and the emission strength. Similarly, in the emission node also, we have these two options, where the first one is the emission color, which allows to set the color of the emission or the glow, and then you have the emission strength, using which you can control the strength of this emission. Now moving ahead, the next topic that we have on our list is the black body node. To understand about it, go to the shader editor, then press Shift plus A, and this time, instead of using the shader menu, we'll open this converter menu, and in this list, the first one that we have is black body. So I'll select this, place it over here, and in this node, you can see that as an input, it takes temperature, and as an output, it gives color, which in simple words means that it provides the color depending upon this temperature value. So if I take this color socket in the black body node and connect it to the color socket in the emission node, then now both will get connected, and this color socket will now take the input of color from the black body node depending upon the temperature value. Also, I'll reduce the strength in the emission to around 1 or 2, and now you can see in this image that how different temperature values will give you different emission colors, and you can also check the same thing by increasing the temperature value in the black body node. By default, this value is equal to 1500 Kelvin, but suppose I type a very high number like 15,000, then in this case the emission color will look like this. So if you want to have an orange or yellowish color, then you can keep the temperature value to around 1500 to 3000 Kelvin. So to conclude, the black body node basically converts the black body temperature into color, and it is used to create materials that emit light at natural occurring frequencies. Now moving ahead, after understanding about these two nodes related to emission, we'll now understand about the glass BSTF. So for this, I'll first select the black body and the emission node, press X to delete. Now in the shader editor, press Shift plus A, then go to shader and select the glass BSTF. Let's place it over here and connect the BSTF socket to the surface in the material output. And as expected, we have this material on the UV sphere which looks similar to the glass. Now this glass BSTF node is very similar to the transparent BSTF, about which we learned in one of the previous chapters. This one also created a transparent looking glass-like material. However, the special thing that we have in the glass BSTF node is the IOR value, which is the index of refraction. So for those of you who don't know, refraction basically means the bending of light when it travels from one medium to another, and for every object like glass, water or air, the value of index of refraction is different. But in transparent BSTF node, you don't have any option to control this value of IOR, and as a result, it takes the default value of IOR, which is equal to 1, and this value is basically for air, and that is why when we connect it to the material output node, it looks completely transparent just like air. But to create realistic looking glass material, it is advisable to keep the IOR value to somewhere around 1.3 to 1.5. Then in the glass BSTF node, we also have this option to control the color, and you can use it to simply change the color of glass. Then by using the roughness value, you can set the roughness of the material. If I increase it to the maximum value of 1, then it will no longer look like glass, but if I reduce the value of roughness, then we'll begin to get a glass-like material. Then you can also adjust the IOR value, which is the index of refraction, depending upon which particular material you wish to create with the glass BSTF. But as I told you before, to get a material which actually looks like glass, always keep this value to around 1.3 or 1.4. And with this, we have now learned about all the 3 topics of different shaders for this chapter. But before moving forward, if you wish to download this Blender file with all the materials that I created and saved in this file throughout this course, then you can join the Patreon, whose link is added in the description of this video. And now it's the time to use some of these nodes that we understood today in the retro gaming arcade scene that we started creating in the chapter number 1. So I've opened this file where we created the simple scene with this arcade gaming machine, some text with the principal volume material applied and a simple background. And if you remember, while applying the materials on this machine, we created this yellow emission material with the principal BSDF node. But now that we have learned about the emission shader, so we'll be changing the principal BSDF node that we previously added to the emission shader. So to do this thing, go to the material properties and check for that material that you created for the emission material. Then go to the shader editor, select the principal BSDF node and press X to delete. Now press Shift plus A, then go to shader and select the emission shader. We'll place it over here. Now connect the emission socket to the surface in the material output node, and in the color, you can choose any color that you wish to assign for emission. Then in emission strength, we'll enter a value of around 2 or 3, and in this way, we can use the emission shader instead of the principal BSDF node to create the glowing materials. Also, if you think that the amount of glow in this emission material is not very high, then for this, we have to use a special feature which is called the bloom settings in compositing. So to understand how it works, we first have to render an image of our scene. So let's go to the camera view by pressing 0 on the numpad, then click on this lock button to enable the lock camera to view and change the camera view according to the scene. After adjusting the camera view as per the scene, we have to render this image. So click on the render button and select render image. Now the rendering will begin, but for now, we'll close this window, and to work on the bloom settings in compositing, you have to open this compositing workspace. For those of you who don't know, compositing is basically used to enhance an image or an animation with the help of the node systems. So to use it, first enable the use nodes by clicking here, and now to add the bloom node to get the glowing effect, press Shift plus A, then go to filter and select the clear node. Let's place it over here in between the render layers and the composite node. Then click here and change the glare type to bloom. Now in order to see the effect of this node on the image, we have to use the viewer node. So press Shift plus A, then go to output and select the viewer node. Let's place it over here and connect the image socket in the glare node to the image socket in the viewer node. And after this, you will be able to see this particular image that we rendered as the background in the compositing workspace. But yes, if you are not able to see this image, then do ensure that this backdrop option is turned on in this workspace. Also, it might be possible that if you are using the compositing feature for the very first time, you might not understand some of the things that I'm doing over here. In that case, I would advise you to watch these chapters of the Blender Master Course series that I previously created in order to understand about the basics of compositing. And now moving ahead, in this clear node, we'll change the quality from medium to high, and to reduce the glowing effect, simply go to the mix value and try to reduce it to somewhere around -0.8 or maybe -0.85, and now the glowing effect looks perfect. Let's go back to the layout workspace, and in order to see the same bloom effect in the 3D viewport also, simply click here, and in the viewport shading menu, go to compositor and change this from disabled to always. By doing this, you will be able to see the glowing effect while being in the 3D viewport. So whenever you're working on some emission materials and you wish to add a glowing effect to the material, then you can use the compositing workspace, then simply add a glare node and adjust the mix value with the bloom selected. And with this, we have now arrived to the end of this chapter. Today we learned about some new material nodes, and then we also used this emission node practically in this scene in order to create the glowing effect. And yes, if you want to download the Blender file with the complete retro gaming arcade scene created, then do consider joining the Patreon, whose link I have added in the description of this video. And so our next chapter will be the chapter number 5, creating portals. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel, press that notification bell so that you can get timely updates about the upcoming chapters. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.